You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. And be sure to smash that like button. Shea Dixon on 3, the Bengal Tiger, good enough to join us as he does each Tuesday. How are you, dude?
I'm good. How are you? You got me?
Gotcha, loud and clear, man. So the portal window is closed. What's the staff doing this week?
Well, they're on the road. They've been on the road now for a couple of weeks, recruiting, whether that's high school. They've stopped in on some portal guys at different points, obviously, before they come to campus and visit or whatever it might be. But the main focus right now is high school recruiting, and that's seeing committed guys, seeing uncommitted guys who are in this 2025 class, part of the class that's ranked number 1 by On3 still. They've been jockeying with Ohio State kind of back and forth as the 1 and 2 overall teams in the country with the recruiting class for the 2025 cycle. And then also doing work for the future. Well, I mean, like to give examples, they were over at East Ascension where Bryce Martinez is a top 5 offensive tackle, but he'll be going into his junior year. And then obviously in New Orleans, there's a number of big-time players. I know they were back in Baton Rouge this week. Gosh, Matt, help me. There's some school. God, they've won state titles. The Bears, I don't know, but they've got a safety. That's the one.
I got it. It's all right, Shea. You can do it too. Whenever you're comfortable, the water's warm. Wait on it whenever you want, man.
I didn't go there, and Dick McMakin doesn't have me hands tied behind my back right now forcing me to say it, so I'm good. I'll carry on. But look, Blaine Bradford is the number 1 safety in the country right now for next year, going into his junior year, and Jakeem Stewart, number 1 overall player for next year as a D lineman coming out of St. Aug, so spending time in New Orleans, and obviously here on campus at LSU at U-High. Lamar Brown is the number 1 interior offensive lineman. All 3 of those guys that are number 1 at their position are ranked right now in the top 10 nationally, regardless of position. So doing work on this number 1 class, but also setting that map for what should be a really banner year next year, in large part because of Louisiana.
I want to go back to the portal conversation just for a second, because they're focusing right now on the high school ranks. Is the staff still pursuing any potential transfer portal targets?
Yes, and they've poured through everybody that's hit the portal at defensive tackle, and it wasn't as fruitful, I think, as some people may have anticipated it being, and that's beyond defensive tackle. That's any position. And it breaks down, look, I won't spend 30 minutes talking about how they got here, but just in terms of overall D tackles, Charles Power, our national director of ranking and scouting, and Cody Belair, who works with him, and Cody's worked in a number of offices in personnel across the country in recruiting, including LSU, and they say, look, D tackle's like it turns out the least amount of elite guys in high school. So when you're battling for it in the portal, it becomes at even more of a premium, and then not a lot of guys entered, and they hosted a few guys, but they all ended up elsewhere, and now we kind of turn the page to who's next. And TJ West out of Kent State is a big name. They've maintained contact with him. The hurdle there is he doesn't graduate from Kent State until August, and he would have to move over as a grad transfer, so he'd have to stay in school all the way through then, and then you're banking on him graduating. But certainly with open scholarships and the need for D tackles, they can play that waiting game, so they'll stay in touch with him. And then there are a few others that they've kind of turned up the heat a little bit on, at least started to dig in more with, have coaches have conversations with them, and that includes guys like Aiden Huntington up at ULM, who had entered the portal and isn't from Louisiana originally, but spent a year at ULM, and actually was at Kent State before that. Kent State's kind of becoming a theme of the portal right now with guys who used to be there, but he had a really big year. He was first team All-Sun Belt. Little undersized, but still had really good production. But I think at the end of the day, Matt, even with numbers in need, what you're balancing is, I should say, available numbers to use on scholarships and then the need for defensive tackles. The balance is they don't want to take anyone who is just a body, right? I mean, and I guess in those terms means, like, are you going to make an impact this year or not? Because they're in this position because they felt like, whether it was because of recruiting or attrition, that they were left with a number of inexperienced guys who you would say are kind of just bodies, maybe are part of a rotation but wouldn't start. You don't need to stack up on more of those. You need to stack up on your 4-man rotation or whatever it might be, 5-man. So I'll be curious to see. I do think, look, I will say this with certainty. Their goal is to get at least a defensive tackle in beyond Gio Paez from Wisconsin, who's already, on board and committed, if not 2 more. So yes, that is the focal point, even though they kind of went after the 2 biggest guys in Barrow and Williams and came up snake eyes with both of them.
Are there other positions potentially they're looking at?
Corner. But here's the thing there, and look, Corey Raymond has been around a decade. I mean, he was the longest tenured member of that staff before Brian Kelly arrived, and now he's back. So most listeners are familiar with him, and certainly his pedigree, what he wants. And I think that there just haven't been that many guys who have entered the portal. Wake Forest had 1 guy go in last week, and that was the first one that Corey had made contact with and really went out and dove into, looked into setting up a visit with, and but he had visited Alabama first. They have a big need at corner and missed on a couple of guys, so that might end up going a different direction. And look, they may not come away with the corner. That's a room where I really would say, even more so than DT, Matt, is they're not going to take anyone just to take them. Because you could develop Ashton Stamps and Tobiano if you keep him at corner, and PJ Woodland, and all these different guys who are on rosters. Alexander comes back healthy, and obviously the Ohio State transfers. You've got guys, so unless they're better than them and they're coming in and starting, they're not looking for rotational pieces there, in my opinion.
Shea Dixon's with us on 3, the Bengal Tiger. Get him on Twitter at Shea Dixon. Staff went and saw Bryce Underwood?
They did. So you can only see during the spring evaluation period, which is what we're in right now, off-campus prospects one time, for our coach. So, and you can send 2 coaches. So they sent Joe Sloan and Frank Wilson up to Michigan and are spending the whole day today at Belleville with Bryce Underwood, who's obviously in school right now. And so they spend time at the school visiting with the coaches and the principal and everybody else. And then they'll spend some time with Bryce after that. And it's kind of, for me, it's not like it's just checking it off the list right now. It almost feels that way, as crazy as it sounds, because he is the number 1 overall prospect in the country. I mean, most people firmly believe that you'd put him right up there with Bryce Young, if not above, and then you're into the Trevor Lawrences of top quarterbacks that have come out in recent years. He certainly puts his name right into that group. And to not only get a win like that out of Michigan, but for him to then already have visited twice since he committed in January, he's not visited any other school. He's maintained that he is very locked in on LSU, will enroll in December. So everything's sort of going as planned for him there, with a guy who, again, I mean, if you just want to base it off rankings, this is as big as a Fournette or someone like that. I know it holds different weight because he was a Louisiana player, but this is about as big as it gets. And they could be in a battle right now where he's at Ohio State every weekend, or Bama, or Georgia, or wherever, and we haven't seen it. He's been 100% locked in.
Shay, I got a couple more for you. As you look at that 25 class, are there guys committed that you start to hear rumblings might not be so solidly committed at this point that maybe LSU's giving a little extra attention to?
I think the one that everyone jumps to is going to be Dakorien Moore, and really would be the only one that I would circle. Now, Dakorien has said he's locked in, but at the same time, he's visited Ohio State a couple of times. He's dropped by Texas. That was always considered the real big threat, and now he said he's going to take a little bit of time away from recruiting, so no visits to any other schools for the time being. But it wouldn't shock me if he does official visits and all that. We're talking about a kid out of Duncanville who is the number 1 overall receiver in the country. He is a top 5 prospect. He's got incredible track speed and is only a junior right now in high school, finishing up on the track circuit. So it's a guy that no one is going to stop recruiting, and LSU knew that. And I've said it on this show before. I go back to the start. LSU pulled off the shocker here. Like, everyone thought he was going to Texas. His whole family, pre-committing to LSU would be spotted in Texas gear. And they said it was a lock, and it was out of, left field to Texas folks when LSU had quietly gotten in there and landed his teammate Caden Durham. And nearly landed Colin Simmons, but then come away with Dakorien Moore. And they've held on until now. He hasn't reopened it or done anything like that, and August will be a year for his commitment. So if there is one we're watching, it's him, but I think that's also, if you're going to sweat over it, you're just a victim of circumstance. That's what happens when you get a kid popped who was not ever expected to go to your school from an out-of-state school when, Texas and others in that area want him very badly because he is head and shoulders the best receiver in this class.
Hey, Shea, last thing for you. The recruiting calendar, I always ask, like, the schedule. So with the spring portal window closed, like, what is next in this cycle?
So they'll get through the eval period, and then they will start hosting official visits, which kicks off that last weekend of May is where I've seen a lot of kids say that's going to be their first official visit to places, and LSU will have some guys in that weekend. And then those first 3 weeks of June are camp, which are only a month away now. It's kind of flying right by. But camp is where a lot of those in-state guys and some out-of-state guys earn offers. We've seen it over the years with DJ Chark and so many others that kind of come out of left field where we haven't been talking about them, and suddenly they've been offered and they've committed, and you look up 4 or 5 years later and they're one of the best players on your team. So it's that's always one of my more enjoyable times of the recruiting calendar, is where you get to go out and watch them compete and land offers.
He's Shea Dixon, On3 the Bengal Tiger, on Twitter at Shea Dixon. He's the best. He's good enough to be with us here every Tuesday in hour number 1. Shady, we appreciate you, man. Be well.
Yep, we'll talk next week. Thanks, Matt.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.